Hello and welcome to SBTV.com. I'm Susan Wilson-Solovic. Joining us today is Jaynie Smith. She's the author of Creating Competitive Advantage. She's also the president of Smart Advantage, a marketing and management consulting firm. Her clients include mid-sized and Fortune 500 companies, and she works with CEOs all around the world. Jaynie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
One of the biggest challenges I think small businesses have is finding qualified salespeople who can really get out there and sell their products or services. What advice would you share with us?
I had an interesting experience recently that made me really focus on this. I'm going to talk about a big company first in my experience, and then I'm going to relate it back to small companies. I bought one of these newfangled telephones, and I say that because it has more features on it than I'll ever use in this lifetime.
Oh, they're smarter than we are.
Absolutely. It's unbelievable. But I couldn't get the thing to work, and I thought, well, I know I'm not real smart about this, so it must be me. So I took it into the place I bought it, and I have to date spent probably 12 to 14 hours with this young man behind the counter trying to get this thing working. The first one was a lemon. Second one, he didn't know how to set it up any more than I did, and there were all kinds of glitches in it. And it was so interesting to me because he said to me, I got in trouble last time you were in here by my manager. She doesn't want me helping customers. And I said, really? He said, yeah, so come in when she's not here so I can finish helping you. And I thought, whoa, that's very interesting. He says, you know, my brother, I have a twin brother, my brother works for a competitor of this company, and he gets in trouble if he doesn't help the customers. And I thought, whoa, that's a competitive advantage. I mean, he clearly has one and you don't. He said, yeah, tell me about it. I said, so let me ask you something. How long ago have you written your resume for be looking for another job? And he says, well, how did you know? I said, because I know you're good. You know, I said to this young man, you're bright, you're good, you know what needs to be done for the customer, but you won't stay in an organization that doesn't support doing the right thing, and the right thing is helping the customer. He says, of course it is. If I don't help you, you turn the phone back in, I don't win, the company doesn't win, and the customer doesn't win. How silly is that? I said, I got it. So I thought about this, and I thought, smart salespeople can smell a company that supports them in the sales process. Supporting in the sales process means having competitive advantages, supporting the salespeople and doing what's right for the customer, and having enough competitive advantages that makes the company sound. Because smart salespeople don't want to work for a company in a nosedive. They want to work for a healthy company. What keeps the company healthy? Good margins. What keeps good margins? The ability to sell not based on price. And so all of those things, when you can do that and you can articulate it to candidates coming in the door, if you're trying to hire for sales, the more you can build the case, A, we're a sound company, here's our competitive advantages, B, here's what we'll do to support you so you can do your job right, they'll come and they'll stay. But they don't stay when your eye's not on the ball, both delivering competitive advantages and the customer.
That's very interesting. Another thing I'm curious about, though, is salespeople who seem to be good outwardly. They can schmooze, they can develop those relationships. I think you talk about Jack Lemmon in your book, but they can't seem to close the deal. Why is that, and what can they do?
Because those slick salesmen who are really good at that.
Snake oil salesmen is what I call them.
They depend way too much on the schmoozing, and guess what? The schmoozing's not working anymore. People want, I mean, it does to some people and to some extent. You know, I take you to play golf, I take you out to dinner, we do that with all our clients, take you on my boat, and oh, that's great. Until what? Until the competitor offers me a lower price. And then it's, sorry, you're a business person, I'm a business person, you'd understand, you'd do the same thing, right?
It's just business.
It's just business. So I say, your salespeople are knocking on the competitor's door every day. The competitor salespeople are knocking on your customer's door every day. When you can answer why us in a compelling way, and that's my theme for every company, you must be able to answer why us. That has nothing to do with price. What are the reasons I should do business with you and not the competition? And when salespeople are armed with that, they will do much better than the slick salesperson who will get away with that for a while.
Sure.
But don't we all see through that in a very short time?
Absolutely. Well, you also talk about an example in your book about a restaurant that was very, very busy but had a long waiting schedule, and people would walk out the door, and that was actually the impetus for an invention. So, and how did that work? What happened?
That's such a wonderful story. It was one of my early clients. The company is called J-Tech. These guys had a restaurant on the Intercoastal in Florida. People were walking away, and they couldn't stand watching customers walk away. So they were also techno junkies, and they created the first pager. You go into the restaurant, here's your coaster pager. It'll beep and light up when your table's ready. We've all had them. Well, anyway, J-Tech invented this many years ago to keep their customers from walking away. Much to their surprise, other restaurants wanted it, hospitals wanted it, all kinds of organizations wanted it. Churches wanted it for the nursery to beep the person when the child is acting up and so on. So they all of a sudden said, we're out of the restaurant business, we're in the manufacturing business. And they started manufacturing these wonderful beepers. Well, what was so interesting was, in those days, Motorola was one of the companies that was the original beeper people. You remember when we didn't have cell phones and we got beeped all the time? We're showing our age. But anyway,
I don't really remember, but no, I'm teasing.
I've heard about them.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Anyway, Motorola saw themselves as the beeper people, and they came into the market and they said, hey, we should be manufacturing that. So J-Tech called my company in and said, what are we going to do? So we did one of these drill down sessions I do, and we came up with the most interesting competitive advantage in the form of a competitive positioning statement. It turns out they could say, their salespeople were then armed with this statement: of the 50 major restaurant chains in America, 100% use J-Tech pagers. Very simple. Great. It was true. It was measurable. It positioned them as leaders. And it says, hey, you want to go try that one just rolling off the manufacturing floor, or ours? It's been out there and endorsed by all these major restaurant chains. And it kept the competitor at bay and allowed them to keep their margins and keep healthy. And that company since has been sold twice to venture capitalists who've just brought it to the next level and the next level. It's been very exciting.
That's a great story. What about, there's the old proverbial question, are salespeople born or made? How would you answer that?
You know, that's a tough one. I think that they're made. And I'll tell you why I think that. In my book, I give 3 anecdotal stories of companies that I've worked with. One case, they're CPAs, and forgive me for the CPAs out there, but they're not notoriously the best salesmen. Interior designers who are great at design, but they don't like selling. In fact, the CEO called us in because they wouldn't sell. And the third one was nurses for a home health care agency. In all 3 cases, none of whom are slick salespeople, none of whom are born to be salesmen. We simply armed them with competitive advantage statements, went out there and said, here, just leave this on a card, leave it as a leave behind, discuss it point by point. You don't need to be slick and going through all the motions, and just tell them what differentiates you. Answer the question, why us? And in each case, the nurses, 40% increase in revenue. That company, the home health care agency, 30% for the interior designers, and the CPAs, I forget what the percentage is, but it was a staggering increase in assets under management for money management business. And in every case, they weren't born salesmen. We just armed them. So I don't know how to answer your question. I think you can make them by giving them the right tools.
Interesting. Actually, my husband and I were in Mexico, and we went on a timeshare tour. And before we went, my husband says, Susan, there is no way we're buying a timeshare. But the salesperson was so knowledgeable and well equipped with presenting a picture that showed a real advantage and benefit to us that, guess what, we bought the timeshare.
You got to be careful of those.
Yeah, absolutely. But we love it.
But that's the thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
if they can make the case. And I just see so many companies where salespeople are not making the case. They're relying too much on cliche. And they're letting price be the differentiator. I know the CEOs I work with are constantly telling me, if one more salesperson comes to me and says, lower the price, I'm going to scream. And they hear it all the time.
Well, and another point you make about the sales process is if there's a CEO that says, I've never heard of you, I don't know anything about you, why should I bother to see you? It's so important that you're able to establish that awareness in the marketplace.
Yeah, and another thing around the communication on that, if you have a website, in my mind, that first page, it shouldn't be products and services. It should definitely not be the about us story. Nobody cares, I hate to tell you.
Right.
It should be why us, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point.
And I see that a lot with real estate agents. They want to tell you all about themselves, where I'm interested in what's your closure rate, how long does it take you to sell.
Exactly.
So that's a good example.
Those are the why us. Those are the quantifiable. I actually had a real estate client in an audience that I spoke to, and she said hearing this talk changed the nature of her business because she got real crystal clear on that, tripled her business in a kind of a soft market, and she got very focused on that. Just
very interesting. Well, these are some great tips, and I'm sure that everybody wants to increase their sales ratio and hit. So it's all in here, creating competitive advantage. And Jaynie, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, and thanks to all of you for watching us here on SBTV.com. Remember, small business is our only business.